Dan Fogelberg outshined his father by every conceivable measure. Dan Fogelberg redefined the genre of folk rock for the 70s and 80s. Variety called Fogelberg's music too country for rock radio, too rock for country radio, and too complex for the adult soft rock stations. Nevertheless, Dan would become a fixture in the adult contemporary music genre, with 4 songs hitting the top 10 on Billboard. Dan's father, Lawrence, was a battalion band leader in the Army. Throughout his career, Dan would fight to prove his music belonged to both rock and country. His first solo album, Home Free, would only reach 210th on the music charts, but it would eventually go platinum with over 1 million sales because of Dan's early, dedicated following. Dan's father, Lawrence, became a high school music teacher when he got out of the military. For 3 decades, Dan Fogelberg produced an incredible string of solo albums, 16 in studio and 3 live. His most celebrated album, The Innocent Age, would be described by Time magazine as catchy, romantic folk rock tunes, especially waltzes, that combined a folksy simplicity with a plaintive sweetness. Dan's father was a band director at Perkin Community High and founded the stage band and the football marching band. When Dan died tragically in 2007, at the age of 56, he had 11 platinum records and 2 gold albums to his name. He was honored by every radio station, rock and country magazine in the country. His final album was released posthumously in 2009 as an international tribute. When Dan's father passed on in 1982, he was honored by the Perkins Municipal Band at a very modest concert. By every conceivable measure, Dan outshined his father's success, except that is in Dan's own measure. Throughout his career, Dan would claim over and over that he wasn't, quote, a legitimate musician yet, not like his father. Not like the big band leader who conducted his students from the front of the stage. In fact, Dan wouldn't claim the title of legitimate musician until much, much later in his career. Not until he played his music at Carnegie Hall, a legitimate venue for legitimate musicians, with his dad watching from the crowd. Only then would Dan be a success by his own measure. You're listening to The Re-Engineered You. This is a podcast about self-empowerment and all the myths, lies, and misconceptions we tell ourselves. Then we use science and history to bust those myths and re-engineer a better you. I'm your host, Todd Laments, the extrovert.
And I'm the writer, researcher, and introvert, Joe Anthony, whose job it is to dig through the outer layer of no-duh on the internet and get to the facts.
We all love stories about visionaries who set outrageous goals and did amazing things to achieve them. We love talking about the time Steve Jobs made his unexpected return to Apple to turn it into a multi-billion-dollar company. But we don't talk about nearly as much people who mature, grow, prosper, and redefine their own success. When we talk about icons of success, we don't talk about Bob Ross, who quietly, calmly set about painting little happy trees for the public and died with a comfortable $10 million to his name. We don't talk so much about Dan Fogelberg, who redefined the world of mellow, nostalgic folk rock. So that's our topic today. When do we stop and redefine our measure of success? When do we change our vision board? When is it time to move the goalpost? To answer these questions and more, we have a few myths to bust. Myths about how we view success. Myths like: Myth 1. Everyone should aim to make more money than their parents. just like Dan Fogelberg. That's the American dream, right? Myth 2. How should we set our goals? If we're changing our vision of what success looks like, is goal setting even worthwhile, statistically? Myth 3. Happiness flows from success. If I get mega successful, I'll be a happier person. Simple, right? So what are we missing? But first, I'd like to share with Joe how Dan Fogelberg first got into music and why he saw his band teacher father as legit in the world of music. Okay, Joe, I gotta tell you, this week I went in full character for this. I've been listening to Dan Fogelberg's all day, every day. You know, you can't get those songs out of your head.
So you've now earwormed them in.
I want you to take a listen. He has emotion. He has this very emotional, amazing voice, and the lyrics are great. If you need a good cry, Dan Fogelberg's your guy, man.
I believe you. I have listened to a couple of his songs in the last few days to sort of get ready for this episode, and you can't listen to it and not think of just like mountains and rain and you know, slow moving like creeks and things like that.
Lost Love.
Perfect.
Well, the first time I got exposed to this was way past his prime. It was in the early 90s, and I had my first traveling sales job, and I was in New York. And I was making more money than I've ever made in my life, and probably actually more than I've made a lot older. But I was very lonely, and I was driving alone. I was by myself for almost 6 months straight, and I remember listening to his music, and it given me some comfort. So every time I hear those songs, it takes me right back to 1995.
Oh, back to driving around and being lonely.
We like to feel bad about our... We talk about loneliness in a lot of these episodes.
Yeah, it keeps coming up.
Well, back to Dan and his father, Lawrence. So his father, Lawrence, left. He left the Army. He was a battalion leader in the Army. And the only reason he left was because he got offered a music job at a high school. So he went there, and guess who he met? Dan's mom.
Oh, well, that's lucky. So his first interview, he meets his first wife.
His first job outside the Army. And guess what her background is? She was an opera singer in college, and she was the music teacher at the school.
Okay, so it's like game recognizes game, that kind of hookup.
Well, think about it. Your mom and dad are both musicians. Kind of a perfect environment for a singer, what do you think?
Right. It's almost like you're trying to breed the perfect singer.
One plays the instruments, and the other one's got the opera voice.
Okay, I see where you're going here.
We always like to discredit talented people and give it all the credit to their breeding, right, don't we?
We can't just say they're talented. We have to be like, well, they had a perfect environment for it.
Even though they had other kids that didn't achieve this musical greatness.
Right.
Now, one of Dan's earliest memories was he was only 4 years old, and he was standing watching his dad conduct the orchestra, waving a baton. And that just really, for Dan, seeing that, he was so proud of his dad. It's something he never forgot. That's the kind of thing that would scar your brain, tattoo your brain, that you'd never forget.
Right. That moment you see your parent at their job doing their best. That's a good moment to have.
Now, Dan loved music from a very young age. His first love was the piano. This is how much he loved playing the piano. He used to go play basketball with his friends. He would fake an injury so he could go home and practice more piano.
We could put this into our healthy obsession or our creative obsession episode.
He went to church with his family. The whole family went to church. He loved the musical part, the worship part, where everyone's up and singing, he's singing, but he hated the sermons. His parents said Dan was just super, super creative at a very, very young age.
Okay, so the perfect pairing of musical parents paid off.
Then in 1963, Dan heard the Beatles for the first time, and that just changed his life. He realized for the first time that songs were written, created. They didn't just exist. And from that day on, he started writing obsessively.
Okay, I can see that happening because you grow up with a father who is in like band, than you're used to hearing like jazz standards and old sort of music that's already been established. There's like a rhythm you're supposed to play.
Or the hymns at church are from years and years ago, right?
Right. There is a way to do it. But then he hears the Beatles and it's like, game on.
And they created a new sound at the time. And I've heard this from so many musicians. I know a local musician here, Bill Hernandez of Portland, and he told me this, and it just resonated with exactly what I read about Dan. He said when he heard the Beatles for the first time, it changed his life, when he saw them and heard them. And what struck me about it is that influence is as strong today as it was in 1963 for Bill Hernandez.
Right. It's a time-traveling influence, which is exactly what you want in anything creative.
Now, Dan Fogelberg's very first band in high school, they were lip-singing Beatles songs all through high school. That's what they did. So she loves you, yeah. Like, can you believe that? This serious musician, this folksy, yeah.
Yeah. I've noticed that trend. Like, I didn't think about this, but we have an upcoming episode about the Bee Gees, and that's exactly how they started. Their original band, the Rattlesnakes, they were doing a lip-syncing competition, and their record broke, and that's why they ended up playing instead of lip-syncing.
That's so cool. We're becoming a music podcast. The history of music is so friggin' interesting, isn't it?
It is, yeah. We're only going to have a couple music episodes, but they're always fun when we get into them.
Now, Lawrence Fogelberg, in Dan's opinion, was a legitimate musician, and he never felt like he was. He always felt insecure about that. He always thought his music was slow and meandering. Now, he wasn't being self-insulting. He wasn't being self-deprecating. That's just the way he felt.
I feel the same way. I've listened to his music. I feel like it's slow and meandering, but I mean that in a very good way.
Joe's heartless. When I play that music, I have a good cry. Now, the reason we did this episode, Joe and I were both floored by the fact that Dan Fogelberg, the man who sold 11 million records, thought his father, the high school band teacher, was a better musician than him.
Right. And that's a theme that has come up on multiple episodes, I've noticed. We have, subtly in the background, we've run into instances where people think that they are less than their parents, or that their parents were somebody that they were supposed to overtake or make more money than. So do you want to... We're going to meander all around with Dan Fogelberg and his music and his success and how he thought of his own success, which is the focus of the show. But do you want to talk about statistically how we're going to measure up to our own parents?
Yeah, we want to be better than our parents, right?
Okay. I will start this out by asking, have you seen the Saturday Night Live skit, Millennial Millions?
No, I haven't seen it.
Okay. You can go on YouTube and look this up. It's a skit where they have a couple of millennials who are just like standing behind the. It looks like a Jeopardy stage. Like they're playing like a game show. And what they do is they tell them, you're just going to have to listen to a boomer come out and complain about things, and you just can't say anything. And that's the whole show. And it's like the boomers will come out and they'll complain about how they can't afford their third car or their second house in Florida, or that, why can't you millennials just work your way through school while you also go to school? And it's
so it's
just
making fun of both, or just the boomers mostly?
It's mostly making fun of the boomers, but it makes fun of both. One of the great parts is they're like, all you have to do to win the show is to shut up and stand there. And they're talking to the millennials. And they can't not complain.
You can only take so much of your parents until you have to tell them to shut them down, though. You and I both know that.
Right, yeah.
That's tough.
So we want to go through the statistics of, you don't have to be a millennial. We're just going to talk about, in this era, how likely is it that you will overcome your parents and their success. Of course, this comes with the giant asterisk of if you're creative and you're in a creative field, that might be a little bit different. And also, it also comes down to your own motivation and hustle and your own luck and skill. So all those are factors. Don't let us shut you down if you've got something good going on.
But creative arts are hard to measure. I get it.
Yeah. But we're going to take from a Forbes article that is just very simply titled, "You'll Probably Make Less Than Your Parents." If that tells you a little bit of where we're going with this article and with this answer. So the writer talks about how hard work used to level the playing field. Todd, I don't know if you feel the same way, but when you think you don't make enough money week by week, do you ever just like think you need to double down or nose to the grindstone?
I do, or I think I have to get a second job, or I need to do something to get ahead. What
Right.
about you? What about you?
I start doing more writing. Like I will start seeking commissions, or I will start basically looking for side hustles.
In sales, I start doing my follow-up a little harder.
Oh, okay.
Discounting my prices and calling everybody back and say, hey, you remember me? Yeah.
Right, okay. It's one of those things where I think that especially television and media teach you that if you don't make enough money, then you haven't worked hard enough. And we've covered this a bit on other episodes. We had a joke on an episode that we talked about, which is, a boss comes in to work and he looks around and he looks at his top employee and he says, you had a great year. If you keep working this hard and you come in on time and you put your nose to the grindstone, I can afford another Lamborghini next year. So there's a little bit of truth to that joke that this article reveals. They talk about mobility, which is economic mobility is basically just how much money you make, taxable income, compared to when you started life, basically your parents. And we've found that city by city, upward mobility in America changes drastically. That if you live in certain cities in America, you have the upward mobility of the American dream. You are basically living the American dream. Your chances of going from the lowest economic bracket to the highest, the tax bracket, is above 9% or something like that. Whereas some towns, especially like if you're in Appalachia, you might as well live in India. Like parts of countries that have caste systems, that the economic mobility is so low, you might as well be locked in a caste.
Zero opportunities.
Yeah, it's a couple percent. So for this study, this article, they talk about they wanted to measure by the decade what the upward mobility rates were. Now, what they were looking at was not lowest tax to highest tax bracket. They were looking at just simply children that made more than their parents. Let's say the American dream is we make more than our dads. Back in the 1940s, so we're looking at the what was the World War II generation called?
Oh, that's not the baby boomer.
No, I think that is the boomer. No, the boomer is their kids.
Right.
And
that's when they were all born, was during World War II.
That wasn't the greatest generation. I think the greatest generation was World War I. Anyway, whatever their title is, we're a podcast. We could pause it and look it up, but I'm not going to do that. 90% of children born in 1940 had upward mobility over their parents, meaning that almost everybody born in the 40s, they were going to make more than their folks. Which, if you were Dan Fogelberg born back then, he might not have been so hard pressed to beat his dad. It may not have been as much of an obsession because naturally everyone would make more than their father, so it didn't matter that much.
Inflation in the booming economy is impossible not to.
Right, exactly. Things were going so well in the 40s that you were just going to make more. That figure steadily declined up until 1984. And in 1984, it reached about 50%.
Well, that's a big drop.
It's a huge drop. So 50% of people born in 1984, only 50%, were going to make more than their parents. And I'll remind everybody listening, this is almost quite literally the American dream. The American dream is you have immigrant parents, or you have parents who are from older American lineages, and then you rise above, you conquer, you get educated, and you make more than your folks.
A different story house, one more car in the garage, right?
Exactly, yeah.
A pool in the back.
Now, if you've got your doc open, could you scroll down to that this graph? And the graph is also from the same article. So if you're listening at home, if you click on our research links, this is the Forbes article, and we pulled the graph from Forbes just so I can horrify Todd here.
So I'll tell you what it looks like. If you were buying stock and making more money than your parents in 1940, you would have lost your ass, because it's going all the way down to nothing in 180 in 1980, and then it went up a little bit and went right back down.
Right. That massive drop, that hit in 1980 is when it hits the bottom of the graph is 50%. So that's the point where they figure that things are bad, is when only 50% of people make more than their parents. We're below that now. The graph doesn't continue past 1980. But we are well below 50%, and they kind of, this is from the National Bureau of Economic Research. They did not continue this graph.
It's too depressing.
Too depressing. I like to believe that. Whenever scientists find something upsetting, they're just like, they have a depression cutoff where they stop doing research. So yeah, we're I'm sure we could find the current updated number, but what this article and what we really want to hit on is you're not likely to make more than your parents. It's not something we should assume, and if you're a parent, it's not something you should assume of your kids either.
Unrealistic expectations. It's a different world.
Right. All the jobs that used to be respectable, well-paid jobs have now been pared down, have had contractors where the employers have redefined what kind of work they can do and how much money they can make, and they have basically streamlined the budget so well for almost all jobs. Before we started this episode, I was telling Todd that I've worked security gigs off and on throughout my life so I can study at the same time. I now make more than a school teacher, which is completely absurd. So basically, industries across the board have streamlined their systems to where they can pay less than your parents made.
Well, and a good example of that, Joe, is internships. People who are well established will take these smartest, young energy kids out of college, let them fill out an application, interview to work there for free.
Right. So they get their 2 years experience so they can apply to other jobs and get real people money.
And give them a little carrot that says, we might hire you here if you work your ass off.
Right. And they get the best years out of them. They're like, you are fresh and ready, and yeah.
Then they just hire a bunch of, then they get a bunch of newer interns from Harvard, you know?
Right.
These old ones, these 26-year-olds are used up anyways.
Yeah, only keep the best and then bring on a new batch. This article goes on to mention what I talked about a little bit, which is side hustles. On average, if you want to make more money, it is actually more economically feasible to have a side hustle than it is to work harder. So you mentioned getting multiple jobs. Side hustles, on average, once you figure one out or get one that's pretty lucrative, make an extra $600 a month. And that's like a national average, apparently.
So you could most people could work another 10 hours at their job and make the same.
Right. So
just stress themselves out more. And
yeah, if it is they have a lot of great examples in this article. I recommend reading it. But if you find an effective side hustle and you pair it with a job, you can basically end up making more money than if you had a second part-time job. And it just depends on what you choose to work on, basically what you have the energy for after that. And of course, they also say invest early. Like that is so far still one of the best ways to secure money. And you may not make more than your parents. You may not pull a Dan Fogelberg and go multi-platinum while your father is a band teacher. But that side hustle and investing early can put you ahead of your parents. If you can't beat the game playing the economy and relying on that upward mobility, you can at least sort of plan ahead and start that early. So I don't know if you've ever done this with your parents, but whenever I have a major success in creativity or jobs, I call to brag to my father. Not because I want him to be impressed with me. I want to rub it in.
You still want his acknowledgement. Come on.
Maybe a little bit of approval, but mostly it's just I want to lord it over him that I'm Fogelberging it.
Well, I call my mom, but unfortunately my mom thinks I'm the greatest no matter what it is.
Oh, well, that's cute. I like that. So how much of this did Dan have in him? Was he actually trying to get one over on his father, or was it just pure, idealization?
As much as it was love, and this story is a love story between a father and a son, there was a little bit in some of his songs about that his dad was tough with him at times. And I think that's forgotten. That his dad wasn't just this angel, perfect dad, right?
Right.
That we all wish we had.
That he could be disapproving.
Yeah, or get tired of his son being weird. I like this. I found this quote, and I'm going to share this with you, Joe, because it's right up your alley. The extroverted entertainer who exists to perform, and the introverted artist who requires solitude.
Okay.
Does that remind you of maybe, Joe, public speaking and your writing?
Maybe a little bit.
But you need both.
Yeah.
To be good at anything, right? To perform, you need some quiet time to really write your stuff and polish it up. And then you got to go out there and lay it down.
There are rare performers who are all extrovert, but usually they have people who are like advising them and feeding them creative information.
Now, Dan loved his father. He respected his father. And he wanted his approval as a musician and a son. Now, he was away at college, and he just dropped out of college. He didn't call his parents. He just showed up and shocked them. There's mid-semester.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, your kid, would that piss you off? Your kid comes, they're both, teachers.
There's no, everyone wants that call from the kid, which is like, I'm thinking about dropping out. So he doesn't even do that. He just shows up.
So his dad's floored, and he lays out his game plan. I'm going to move to L.A. and become a rock star.
Oh, God.
So his father sits there quietly for a while, probably red-faced, if I can imagine.
I was about to say, and then he gets the gun. Like that.
And finally he says to Dan in a quiet way, okay, I don't agree with this, but if you really want to do it, go try it for a year. And if it doesn't work out, you're going back to college.
Okay, that's really understanding.
Now, this was, Dan says, years later in his whole life, this was the biggest gift his dad could ever give him. The freedom to do this, and signed off on it. And then when he wrote the hit song, Leader of the Band, the famous tribute to his father, this is the line: "Thank you for the freedom when it came my time to go."
Wow.
Now, usually you hear about them going to Los Angeles and all these auditions, getting kicked out of all these, music studios and managers, right? Isn't that the story?
Right, the Hollywood dream is you wait tables until somebody notices.
And they find you singing in some bar and say, "Kid, you got what it takes," right?
Right.
He got a record deal really fast. He signed with Clive Davis. Now, do you know who that is?
Who's that?
Clive Davis has signed, I don't know if you've heard of these guys, Bruce Springsteen, Billy Joel, the band Chicago.
Oh, my God. Okay.
Some real heavy hitters. So he's pretty connected.
I mean, connected, no disrespect to the genre, but it kind of sounds like a lot of old timers to me as far as music goes.
It was the 70s, Joe. Come on. They were all old. They were young then.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think of folksy kind of music being big business, do you, Joe?
No, not at all.
I think of like the campfire with this guy with a ponytail and people, a beard, Jesus-looking guy playing, right?
I imagine this kind of music being blared from VW vans.
Well, Clive Davis was shopping his stuff all over town, and he was getting offer at offer from the big record companies. He finally signed with the biggest of the big, Columbia Records.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And Clive Davis had an eye for talent, and he said to Dan, Dan was feeling a little insecure about it. I don't belong here with these artists. He says, "You belong here with each one of them. You're just as good an artist as they are." And then he got a big, fat check from Columbia. He was only 21 years old.
Dang. If Clive was telling that to me, I would say, "Hold on. Could I put my father on the phone, and could you repeat that, please?"
Yeah, right? Well, his first house was right next to the band The Eagles. I know, have you heard of them too?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, Joe Walsh was the guitar player, was his neighbor. They played, but anyways, this is a big story. I'm gonna cut it short. So even though Dan had these huge backers, he had a big money deal. He really struggled to find his sound, and his record sales were shit. He didn't know what to do, but he stayed active. He started writing more and working with different musicians. He had to figure his sound out.
Okay, that's a worthy goal. We're gonna sort of, if you don't mind, can we cliffhanger that? Because I want to get back to how Dan found his sound and how he sort of worked his way to his folksy music.
I got you.
But I want to sort of take a moment here, because part of measuring success when we started setting this episode up was everybody has an idea of what they look like successful. Like, can we do like one of those cheesy self-help meditations right now?
Please.
I'll close my eyes too. If you close your eyes, what does successful you look like?
I see myself in the sports car, with women adoring me, fame.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
What about you?
I imagine myself in the back of your sports car. No. An apartment somewhere, like in a major city, filled with books, drinking cocktails and entertaining people with how witty I am.
Pretty interesting. People laughing at all your jokes.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm getting all the attention.
And for Dan Fogelberg, it was probably like, close your eyes, and he's like, and then it's just weed smoke and
yeah. 21 is young, isn't it, Joe?
Right. For him, apparently his goal was get more successful than Dad, and also find a sound, get that sound nailed down. The music he was into, he must have wanted to get into like rock and stuff. Like, it sounded to me whenever I listened to interviews that he wanted sort of like a little heavier of a sound, or he just didn't have his place yet.
I didn't get that. What I got from it was he wanted the rock star lifestyle, kind of like what you thought. He wanted to be on tour.
Yeah.
He wanted to sell the T-shirts. He certainly didn't want to go out there and be Led Zeppelin.
Right. Yeah, but that's he appealed to that. He appealed to that sort of lifestyle. So we're talking a lot about goals because you can't measure your own success without doing what Todd and I just did. Most people have an image of what they look like when they're successful. So we're going to talk about the flaws and also the successful techniques of goal setting, because one of the things that people are encouraged to do to set goals is completely wrong. And one of the things they're encouraged to do is 100% right, and you can't really make accomplishments without it. So we're gonna sort of break that down. This is going back to, we'll have this in our links. This is a Harvard study, and there's also a Harvard Business Review article that we're going to reference called Increasing the Odds of Achieving Your Goals by Setting Them with Your Spouse. And a lot of these are about the stats behind goal setting. So what they first started with, we're going to start with why you should set goals. And if you are into self-help, you already know all this probably. 83% of the U.S. population, they don't set goals. Only 3% of the U.S. population bothers to write down their goals. And here's the crazy thing. If you bother to set goals, like you actually like put them on paper, you're 10 times more successful than those that never write them down.
That sounds like giving yourself a raise right there. 10 times?
Totally, yeah. It's goal setting is your likelihood of succeeding with tangible goals. Not just tangible, but like well-defined is actually a much better way to put it.
We say granular here, Joe, on the re-engineer.
Exactly. If you didn't say it, I was going to. Yeah, if you get granular and you know what you want emotionally, and also you have a path to get there, you are 10 times more likely to succeed at something. And comparing the two groups, let's compare people who write it down compared to people who just think it. The people who write it down are 3 times more likely than to complete a goal than those who just have it in mind. So there's a huge difference between people who don't have goals and those that do, and another huge difference between those that write it and those that just think it. So it's really good to set goals. Todd, when you set goals, can you tell us a little bit about micro changes and sort of the edible bites method?
What I like to do is take a big goal and, how to eat an elephant one bite at a time. And I take what the little steps are that I'm going to have to do to accomplish it, the ones that I know. And I'll start with the easiest one to build some momentum.
Okay, that's the opposite of what I normally imagine goal setting to be. Usually I think, let's slay the biggest part first because that's ambitious and it makes me feel like I'm doing something. But go for the easy ones first.
Just to get yourself going and then kind of problem solving the whole way. Also make a list of the people that can help you. I found that to be very effective.
Oh, I like that.
And reach out to them. How about you? What do you do?
Most of my goals involve writing and trying to complete projects and going after publications and contests. So what I do is I start by outlining. At first, I make a list of who I want to submit to in a year or a quarter, and it's always way higher than me. Like it's not these are tough contests and publications that probably won't have me.
But do you have a big goal of how much money you want to make or how much views you want to get or a book deal? Or is there something, or is it just the deadlines for each entry?
Oh, it's books. The big goal is novels, but I recognize that you have to cut your teeth and get better and attain mastery through short stories first.
So you're doing the training and the rep method then.
Exactly. Yeah. There is a certain type of contest that once I place high enough in it, I will feel confident enough or good enough. And so that's the microbites. That's you outline it one short story at a time. You do it one contest at a time. It's taking those little steps. And like you said, going for the achievable stuff and the momentum stuff first.
I think when you try to tackle that big gorilla, it just doesn't work. You just don't even know where to start. So you don't start.
Yeah. I've met people who have gone novel first, and a lot of times it's draining and it's difficult. You said the gorilla, you fight the gorilla until you pass out. So
yeah, it just looks at you.
Right. But most goals work that way. I really believe that if you take, say, weight loss, and instead of doing the little dietary changes or going to the gym and just allowing yourself to show up every day for 5 minutes and leave again, if you don't do the small things, if you go straight for, I'm going to get on the treadmill for 2 hours, it'll kill you. Like you'll pass out on the gorilla's back. Have you ever seen, it's kind of like I'm not going to say crappy movie, but it wasn't really super well received. Have you seen the movie Invincible with Mark Wahlberg?
Yeah, it's the Eagles, the one where he walks on the football team.
It's like
That's a meathead movie that I enjoyed.
Heck yeah. It's
part of it's on a football field and part of it's on the bar. That's the two.
Yeah.
The two stages.
Well, the premise is that the Eagles have an open an open recruitment effectively, and
a walk-on player.
Yeah, and football teams never ever do this. Like they recruit.
They open it up to the public, and not just football players from college, but just any Joe on the street.
Right, and they basically watch all these weekend athletes and drunks and people who play street ball. They show up and they play football, and they pick one guy out of the giant masses that arrive
as a publicity stunt, not as a real serious player. Yeah.
But he sets goals in a very interesting way. If you've seen the movie, you know where this is going. Early in the movie, his girlfriend makes a list, like when she breaks up with him. Like she leaves him, takes everything out of the apartment, and she leaves a note that has like a bunch of stuff on the list, like you're nobody, no one's going to remember your name, you're never going to make any money. It's a list of horrible things to say. But throughout the movie, he keeps it in his locker. And as he sort of goes through this process of like, he works his ass off and he actually manages to make the team and stay on it. And he just goes through this list.
Fuel for the fire.
Fuel for the fire. But that's, for me, I always use that as sort of an interesting example of like, that's an odd type of goal setting, but I believe that works.
That's the pain thing. Have you ever done that where you've lost a contest or you're like, I'm going to show you, or somebody in your family said, you're not going to be a professional rider. You're not good enough.
Oh, heck yeah. Anytime I get a losing piece back, I go through it just with a comb and I find out what I did wrong. I'm always afraid, looking back at something I've written, that I won't know what to correct, and I always find what went wrong. Like, I'll always look at it and be like, oh, this is fundamentally flawed.
Well, one thing Joe's taught me just from, our creative stuff together is anytime you're criticized by somebody, because a lot of times I just dismiss criticism and not see it as feedback. I see it as them just being negative towards me. He's taught me that in everything, no matter how poorly it's delivered, there's usually a little bit of truth to it.
Right. They're picking up on something they are dissatisfied with. And sometimes they can't identify it, but you can sometimes look into it and see something. Now, we're going to get into the dangerous part of goal setting. The part where people can actually sort of distract themselves and drag themselves off task. So when we started this, I had Todd fantasize about the part where he's in a sports car, wind blowing through the hair.
Chinchilla jacket. Very lame.
Yeah,
I'm really
lots of
sorry.
money.
That must be an honest answer, because the first thing that popped in my women's, my wife's going to kill me if she reads this. Here's this.
She'll hear it. I'm sending it to her.
Why would I need women around me when I have her?
Right.
You're just getting me in trouble, man.
Yeah, you didn't say wife in the seat of the car. That was odd. Something that is, we're going to link to this article too. Something that your brain kind of does is a neat trick that may shoot your goals right in the foot. Psychologists have found that while positive thinking is broadly beneficial, if you fantasize about it, if you spend your time imagining those things having already happened, you will actually apply yourself less. So one of the things they talked about in this was they did a study where they tried to have people fill out job applications, and they also looked at salaries, and they looked at people who goal set. And they kind of found out that people who fantasized about already having had achieved a job or had already fantasized about making more money, they applied for fewer jobs, they were offered fewer jobs, and if they're able to find work, they had lower salaries. Now, there was a Jeremy Dean, a psychologist at UCL London, and he has a side blog, which I enjoy sort of reading from time to time. He has this to say, and I'm going to quote it directly because I thought it was really, really helpful. He says, "The problem with positive fantasies, they allow us to anticipate success in the here and now. However, they don't alert us to the problems we're likely to face along the way and can leave us with less motivation. After all, it feels like we've already achieved our goal. It's one way in which our own brilliance lets us down, because it's so amazing at simulating and achieving our future events, it can actually undermine our attempt to achieve those goals in reality."
So it kind of stall. So I've lived this where you start talking about, I'm going to lose weight, quit smoking, write this book, and you get all this attention from everybody telling you how great you are. And so you don't start the work process because you're getting the attention that you're supposed to get at the end.
Exactly. That is such a great way to put it, and I see that on Facebook all the time. People will post about their goal, and everyone will show them love because they want that change for you. They want to be positive, and they really want to help. They're not trying to sabotage you, but in your mind, you're like, oh, got it. There's the positive reinforcement I needed, and I can imagine it, which means I already did it, right? Right, brain?
Exactly, and that's what I do. I notice that when I'm talking, or I guess the only thing you could call it is bragging, I'm not doing. When I'm really doing all the time, I never talk about it. When I'm dieting or working out or writing, I'm just thinking about what I'm going to write next. I'm not telling everybody I'm writing or telling everybody I'm dieting or working,
Right. You stick to it and you do it, and you already have your goals in writing, but you don't try to imagine it so much. You don't do what we did at the start of this, which is fantasize about it. So we teased a bit Dan finding a genre, and especially how his dad played into that. Is there was there sort of like I'm obsessed with movies, you know that. Was there a movie moment where Dan got his sound?
1975, his father gets very ill. And Dan's living his rock star life with his record deal in L.A. He drops everything and goes to be at his father's bedside. Now, what do we talk about great artists need besides stage time? They need solitude, right? To write.
Right.
And this was what it was. He was touring at the time, and he was doing recording. And he really needed the momentum at this time of his career. But he loved his dad so much, he didn't care. He just stopped the bus and went home.
That's sweet. Okay.
Now, when I say that, I think about, nowadays. You go home for the weekend, see your parents, and leave, right?
Right. Do laundry.
There should be better things to do. Borrow some money that you're not going to pay him back. He stayed there for months.
Okay.
Now, remind you, even though he had a record deal, Joe, he wasn't selling very well. 210th on the charts. He was underperforming on what they wanted him to do. So he spent his days at his dad's bedside, and all night he stayed in this little tiny Midwest studio crafting his music, his new sound.
Okay. So he's doing the right thing, but it's almost like an artistic getaway for him.
Where he had nothing else to focus on. He had a clear head, no distractions. So he started blueprinting his songs, which I guess is like framing your writing, right? The structure.
Okay.
The outlines.
Right.
Now, he played some of his stuff. He's working around the clock for his friends, and they absolutely flipped out. They said, this is not demo stuff. This is not to be continued. This is master tapes. These are hits. And he didn't even believe they were hits. He thought they weren't even that great.
Wow. So his blueprint / outlines, they're like, this is the real finished deal.
I think he was just a humble guy. That's why he looked up to his dad. That's why he thought his stuff was just never good enough.
Okay.
I don't think it was an insecurity. I think it was just a drive. He just wanted to be better. Now, out of this home trip came 3 of his biggest records. Netherlands, Twin Sons of Different Mothers, and then Phoenix. All 3 of these went double platinum. And platinum is 1 million, right? Mm-hmm. So they sold 6 million records.
Compared to his 210th on the chart. Now he's getting double platinums every time he puts out a record.
Now, you remember our Eminem episode we did? What was that about? Celebrity insulation?
Insulation, yeah.
And we talked about him selling $500K to $650K, right?
Right.
This is 2 million, for one record.
Right.
So that should tell you. And that was the old days. There's less people in the world.
Yeah, you wouldn't think Dan Fogelberg, who is quietly, slowly making these mellow tunes, just kicking butt in the records compared to, like, Eminem.
Now, what his friends said was good, ready to go, turned out to be great. And in 1979, he brought his show to Carnegie Hall in New York. And this was the proudest moment of his life. His parents were in attendance, and he finally got to prove to his father, if there were any questions that he had or the world had, he was now a legitimate musician.
That is awesome.
Now, his father had been there decades ago for a concert. Joe, can you imagine how proud he was to see his son up there singing on that stage?
Especially after him leaving college, coming back, taking care of his father, and then seeing him up there playing. That would be incredible. Can I ask you a little bit about this moment, like his father? Like, we kind of measure happiness in different ways, and that's got to be like true happiness, right? The moment where like you don't just meet but you exceed your parents' expectations. This whole episode is basically built on that one little moment. Like we in episodes that we draw up and design and sort of like work on the narrative, we try to figure out why moments in history happen. If we're on episode 42 now, if you haven't caught on, there's usually one moment in an episode where it kind of like illustrates the point. And for me, and I don't know if it's the same for you, the moment where Dan is looking out at the crowd and his father is there, and they realize one has surpassed the other, the son is doing better than the father. That's got to be the happiest moment for him, right?
Yeah, and this show is different than every other show. You
Yeah.
think of how many times he's put his guitar on, warmed his voice up.
Right.
This is the one where you can fight back tears, you know.
Right. The platinum albums that came before must have felt really good, but thinking now is when I succeed, when I'm if you're Dan Fogelberg, now is when I succeed, when I'm legit. And that's what that did for him, is going to Carnegie Hall. That was legit to his father.
I can only think of the Olympian getting the gold medal put around their neck.
Right.
It's not going to get any better than this.
Right.
This is it, you know.
So this episode is measuring success. When do we actually redefine that? And a lot of it is completely based on happiness. So we actually kind of want to define happiness and where we sort of draw that line. What will make us happy? What will make us satisfied? What will give us that Dan Fogelberg moment where we're looking out at the crowd and we realize that we had made it? So we're going to go to a study that Todd actually sent to me. This is about lottery winners and people who have been paralyzed, paraplegics.
Now, what could those two possibly have in common, Joe? Enlighten me on this.
This comes, what we're pulling from, this study can be found all over the internet because it is very famous and very famously revealed something interesting about happiness.
And I read it the first time and said, there's no way. And after I read it, I was floored. I just sent it to Joe.
Feels impossible. We're going to link off to Business Insider, who had a good, I was going to say a good version of this. They have a good takeaway. But this study actually is from 1978. And it compared 22 lottery winners with 22 control group members, basically just everyday Joes who didn't win anything. And they compared the lottery winners in the control group, to 29 people who were paralyzed in accidents. So paraplegics and quadriplegics. In general, and they're just going for reported happiness. Basically, they asked them, rate your satisfaction effectively. In general, the lottery winners reported being happier than the people with paraplegic or quadriplegia. About 4 out of 5. So versus a 2.96 out of 5. The control group, the everyday Joes, reported 3.82 out of their satisfaction out of 5. So not actually significantly different from the lottery winners. However, the lottery winners reported getting at least the least enjoyment from what researchers called mundane pleasures. So, Todd, when I say mundane pleasure, what are you imagining?
Doritos, Netflix, comfortable shoes. Am I warm here?
Yeah, I think you're dead on. Mundane pleasures would be like eating breakfast, talking with friends, just little things that give you fun in life.
Birds chirping.
Yeah, lottery winners got less enjoyment, less fun out of mundane pleasures. Overall, winning the lottery didn't increase happiness nearly as much as the researchers thought. And a catastrophic accident didn't make people, like the paraplegic and quadriplegics, as unhappy as they might expect.
That one's shocking, too. You think you'd just be, because we talk about depression, loneliness, and heart. You think that would be every second of your waking time, right? And your dreams.
Yeah, I hate to beat up on paraplegics. I'm not, but if you are a paraplegic or quadriplegic, I would assume your happiness is 1 out of 5. Like I really just assumed
on a good day.
On a good day, you would be miserable, and on an average day as a lottery winner, you'd be at a 5 out of 5. Like every day is the top. Every day is a 5 out of 5. But that's not the case. They basically met in the middle stat wise. And sometimes the lottery winners didn't do as well because their mundane pleasures were gone. Like talking to friends and eating Doritos and breakfast did not make them feel as good. I'm going to quote Melissa Dahl from The Science of Us. Basically said the following, which sounds pretty close to what we're saying, Todd. She said, eventually the thrill of winning the lottery will wear out. If all things are judged to the extent to which they are depart from a baseline of past experience, gradually, even the most positive events will cease to have an impact as they themselves are absorbed into the new baseline. So effectively what we're saying is that if you win the lottery, you have one big major Yahoo moment, your joy goes up to 11, and then from then on, breakfast and talking to friends and mundane activities just seem dull.
And that sucks. So it took all the pleasurable things, the little,
Right. Whereas if you are a paraplegic, you may find more enjoyment out of mundane activities that you otherwise thought you wouldn't get to enjoy again.
I had an acquaintance that I used to work with, and I guess I would call him a friend. And he sold some property, and he got zoned a certain way, and he ended up making $5 million. Like, not overnight, but pretty much overnight.
Mm.
And he was a great guy. He was a happy guy before he got that money. We used to get pissed off because he didn't quit his job. And he came to work, and we finally kind of bullied him out because we needed the commission money. We don't need some millionaire around there.
Okay.
Well, we're trying to pay the point of the story is this. He divorced his wife of many, many years and got involved with an unhealthy, toxic relationship with a woman and ended up committing suicide only a few years later.
Holy hell.
And we were shocked because he was so grounded, such a good guy, so down to earth. We thought money wouldn't change him, and it really just ruined his life.
Yeah, you'd think if somebody could pull off success, then that would be the guy. It is odd to sort of go through this research and find out that measuring success isn't a linear graph. It's not like you win the lottery, you are exactly, $10 million happier. It really is our brains adjust, and we have to adjust too. We have to move the goalpost, whether that's near or farther. And to your point about him making $5 million nearly overnight. We've talked in other episodes about how happiness plateaus, that you only need, depending on the source, you can go to different websites online, but you only need about $80,000 a year to $120,000 a year. Within that range seems to be the happiness plateau. More than that, it doesn't really change anything. And less than that, you're insecure. So you want to be up to mentally secure, so you know that your needs are met, and then after that, it's just finding comfort effectively.
It's interesting because I think most of us think that the more money you have, is the bank account's like a happiness account, right?
Exactly.
For every
yeah.
dollar you have a smile. Right?
My bank account is a graph of happiness. Yeah, but it's not really the case. And then, of course, I'm always going to harken back to that Time article that we keep referencing, which is self-esteem peaks at 60.
Which we love to talk about. If you hang out with Joe and I, we talk about that because we know that our best years are ahead of us. We didn't know that until we did that research.
That episode blew me out of the water. That was our self-esteem episode. It doesn't drop off. Your self-esteem doesn't drop off until far later. So your measure of success, not your parents' measure of success, not your vision board's measure of success, but your measure of success that guides you, should be something that is tangible, that is something you can do physically, not your money, not a graph of happiness, but something that you can plan out. And also keep that in mind that your self-esteem won't peak till 60. So if you get your measure of success before then, don't start looking for something to fix. Just imagine, hey, I've gotten that measure of happiness. Or if you haven't gotten it yet, just keep that in mind, that 60 is when your self-esteem peaks, so you still got time.
And I've done my own research on this, and I've reached out to about 75 to 80 people in that 60 to 65 and asked them that question and told them what the article said and what our research says. Every single one of them says, yeah, that's right.
They just quietly
I'm waiting
agree.
for someone to say, oh, no, it was when I was 35.
Right.
When I was young and hot,
Exactly. Tell me I was at my peak in my 25s. I dare you. Ironically, the measure of success for most of these studies that came from self-esteem was health and personal connections. That wealth, as long as it's able to support those first two, that's where you will find your true measure of success. Like Dan Fogelberg. I mean, it sounds like he had respect and connections. I mean, he certainly was connecting with his father, and he had his health, and that kind of freed him creatively, I think. Can we talk peak Dan? Like, how did this sort of... I mean, like, we were listening to his music on the way to this podcast, so we know that this ends well, right?
Yeah, it was great. It was great to hear his. It was great to hear his voice, listen to his interviews. Joe and I did that together. His peak success, of course, was Carnegie Hall, as far as happiness. But his measurable success was 1981. He had a really good selling. It was called The Innocent Age, and it was a double album, which don't sell very well. I mean, it's twice as many songs, so it costs twice as much. Mm-hmm. So he just doesn't sell as much. It's a different price point. But he had 4 top 10 hits in that. And so it sold outrageously. One of my favorite songs, Leader of the Band, Hard to Say. Just great songs. And so for him, at this point, he was selling out 20,000-seat arenas.
Dang.
Yeah, so that's big rock star. And that's what he said. It's big time rock and roll. And that was his peak. And it couldn't get any bigger than that. It was just amazing.
Selling out that big of an arena, you usually only imagine like that's Justin Bieber, hard rock, and Kanye West. Like you do not imagine Kanye. Like you don't imagine Dan Fogelberg and his mellow, easy, folksy sound selling out massive arenas like that.
No, again, you were in the campfire and the Jesus,
right? Exactly.
And the hippie Jesus, and yeah, no. But it was big time rock and roll. Now, we talked about Dan's peak, right? Mm-hmm. Carnegie Hall, and then his success at 20,000 people in an arena. But his father's peak for happiness with his relationship with his son. His son wrote a song for him it's one of his number one selling songs called Leader of the Band. And it was a tribute to his dad. And so the first time Lawrence heard this song, it was 1981, and his son brought home a tape of it and played it for him.
So compare the satisfaction as a father to coming home and being like, hey, I've got a record-breaking hit for you, compared to last time he came home where he's like, hey, I'm quitting college.
I'm ruining my life.
Right.
So Larry was, of course, flattered by the song that his platinum-selling son had written for him. But what the article says, what really warmed his heart was all these former students of him would write him and say how this Dan song about him touched their lives. And what Dan said, what the most special thing about this song was not that it was a love song to his dad, and it showed how much he appreciated and loved his dad. But he said how it touched so many other people's lives and how many people wish they would have said goodbye to their father.
Oh, wow.
And so he got to hear this song. What was really cool to me and how I got started on this article was Lawrence Fogelberg, before he died, and he did pass in August 5th of 1982. But before he passed away, he got all this attention. All these newspapers were reaching out to him, wanted to do phone interviews with him, wanted to talk to him about this. So as an elderly man, you know how exciting that is. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're excited when you're old to get a piece of mail, right. Get a letter. So he got to go on TV or got to go on the radio and got to be in all these articles talking about his life as being the band leader and his son's story. So I thought that was really good.
That's the perfect thing to do if you were a retired old man, is being invited to talk about your time leading bands and brag about your son. How awesome would that have been?
Free parental bragging. It's great.
Exactly.
So he passed away in 1982. Now in 2004, Dan Fogelberg was diagnosed with advanced prostate cancer. After he went through therapy, his cancer went into remission, and in 2000, so a year later, 2005, he announced that he had success and he was, he's beating cancer.
Okay.
But 2 years later, the cancer returned, and he passed away. He was only 56 years old.
Jeez.
Now, he died. He spent his adult life. When he was traveling out to L.A. as a starving musician there for that few minutes, he ran out of gas in Colorado, and he earned a few extra bucks. And that mountains and just the landscape of Colorado was always very appealed to him. So he always lived in Colorado. But he also had a place in Deer Isle, Maine, which is a small village. It's actually where I'm from, of only 2,000 people.
Wow, really?
That's where he went and died. And he passed away there with his wife, Jean, and he had his ashes scattered in the Atlantic Ocean, right off the coast of Maine.
That's beautiful.
Okay, about 10 years after Dan's death, his wife, Jean, she arranged a CD of his work as a tribute. Now, they got together and they did a performance to honor him. And I'm going to read some of the bands that were there. Joe Walsh was a guitar player for the Eagles. Garth Brooks, Trisha Yearwood, Vince Gill, Amy Grant, Jimmy Buffett, Margaritas in Paradise, Michael McDonald, Donna Summer, Boss Skaggs, the Zac Brown Band. So this mix of country artists and pop artists got together and did a tribute just to Dan Fogelberg and had a concert. So that should tell you how influential he was.
That's a little bit bigger than his father having a small sort of like in the park, concert held for him. That's huge. Digging
the research, I'm going to leave you with this. And this one cracked me up. This is a true sign of success. He had a song, it was a hit song called Longer. And it's been cited for many years to be Michael Jackson's favorite song. Don't you just think artists like their own songs? You don't think about that.
That should be everyone's goal, is whatever they're doing, your favorite artist should list you as one of their favorites.
Yeah.
Eventually, Malcolm Gladwell will be like, the re-engineered you. That's one of my
I can't wait. Hopefully soon.
We can dream.
Despite Dan making more money than his father, we can't all expect the same, according to economic trends. What we can expect, however, is to script our life for success on our own terms, not our parents, not our grandparents. Instead, we should all dream big, but we might want to dream of success that we're cut out for. Feel free to set goals, achieve your life, keep a vision board, a bucket list, or sticky notes on the fridge of things you want to accomplish. But remember, it's more important to engage in the practice of achieving those goals than simply fantasizing about them. Envision yourself crossing the finish line, or being 10 pounds thinner could just trick your brain into thinking you've already achieved it. Act, don't just plan. Finally, we can't all anticipate being rich and famous, but we can all work hard, save smarter, and engage in side hustles to make a few extra bucks. But money in itself doesn't make us happier day to day. It just removes problems. But you know what you can plan for? Happiness and enjoying what you do. That's a type of success we all can plan for and achieve. Or as Maya Angelou put it, success is liking yourself, liking what you do, and liking how you do it. You've been listening to The Re-Engineered You. Thank you so much for listening to the show. You mean the world to us. We have a new episode every week.
Connect with us at www.re-engineeredyou.com, where we have research links, show notes, and blog articles for each of our episodes. We also appreciate feedback, and we love spirited debate.
We're not experts in anything, but we've got an opinion on everything. I want to give a big shout out to somebody. Joe?
I was going to say, speaking of opinion, let's do shout outs this time.
Well, the big shout out is to Amber Dean. She is our blog writer on staff. She gave us the idea for the manipulation, the Napoleon episode. You remember that one?
One of our best ones so far.
And she has been feeding us ideas, but she does a really good job with our blog articles. She turns our blog articles on like show notes on steroids.
Yes.
And we got to thank that to Amber. So we appreciate you, Amber.
If it makes Amber feel better, I think more people read that blog than actually listen to the show. So she's doing very well.